On my 70th birthday, I thought my family would finally gather around me, to celebrate the years, the love, the sacrifices. But I was wrong. Instead, my daughter-in-law raised her glass and said, to the old lady going to the nursing home. The words hung in the air, sharp and cruel. I smiled, but inside, my heart shattered. I never expected this on a day that was supposed to be about family, love, and appreciation. My hands trembled slightly as I held my glass, not because I was afraid, but because I could feel the cold indifference from those I had given everything for. For years, I've put my family first. My son, my daughter-in-law, and my grandchildren, I thought we were a family. I had helped them, been there for every milestone, every birthday, every crisis. Yet, here I was, abandoned on my own special day. The years of care, the endless hours I'd spent taking care of them, didn't seem to matter anymore. Veronica, my daughter-in-law, the woman who I had welcomed into our home, was now the one to strip me of my dignity. How quickly they forget. I looked around the table. My son, Thomas, barely looked up from his plate. His eyes avoided mine as if he was ashamed of what was happening, but he did nothing to stop it. He said nothing. I had raised him to be better than this, to understand respect, to honor family, yet here he was, complicit in his wife's cruelty. I felt the weight of every year I had spent building a life for them, now slowly slipping away. The room felt colder, as if the warmth of family had vanished the moment the toast was made. As the laughter continued around the table, I sat there, my mind racing. Was this how they saw me now? Was I nothing more than a burden, something to be discarded when it was no longer convenient? The tears I refused to shed were held back, trapped behind the walls I had built for myself. My throat tightened as I tried to maintain my composure. How many more birthdays would I have to endure this? How many more moments would be stolen from me, replaced with words of mockery? I forced myself to smile, a weak, trembling smile that only I could see was fake. I couldn't let them see how much it hurt. I couldn't let them know the depth of my pain. But as the night went on, a quiet resolve began to form. They thought they could push me aside, treat me like I no longer mattered. But they were wrong. I would not let this be the end of my story. I would not let them win. The house felt emptier now, quieter than it ever had before. I hadn't been prepared for the silence that followed Veronica's toast. My thoughts were loud in my head, echoing in the hollow of the room as I sat at the dining table, staring at the untouched glass of wine in front of me. I tried to focus on the clinking of silverware, the hum of small talk, but it all felt so distant. I had spent so many years making sure that this family was united, that no one ever felt alone or unimportant, and yet here I was, forgotten. The years of sacrifice didn't seem to matter anymore. Veronica's words, sharp and biting, rang in my ears. She had always been distant, but this was something else. It wasn't just the words, it was the deliberate disregard for everything I had done for them. How quickly they turned. How easily they discarded me. I tried not to look at Thomas, but I couldn't help it. He had to know. He had to see what was happening. Yet, there he was, barely a glance in my direction, his attention focused on his plate. A faint trace of guilt flickered in his eyes for just a second, but it quickly vanished as he took another bite of his food. He had always been the one to tell me everything would be fine, that I didn't need to worry, but now I couldn't even reach him. I was sitting in a room full of people, but it felt like I was the only one who mattered. The silence was suffocating. The same silence that used to fill our house with warmth and laughter, now felt like a weight pressing down on my chest. How did we get here? How did the family I had worked so hard to build fall apart so easily? I could feel the anger rising in my throat, but I kept it down. I couldn't let them see me fall apart, not now. I had spent too many years making sure they were taken care of, putting them first in every way, and now, they thought I was a burden. I wasn't sure if I was more angry or heartbroken. Veronica's words played over and over in my mind, and with each repetition, they felt more real. Maybe I had been naive, thinking that my place in their lives was secure. Maybe I had overlooked the signs all along, the subtle hints that I wasn't as important to them as I had believed. I glanced down at the ring on my finger, the one Thomas had given me on our anniversary years ago. It had been a symbol of love, of a promise that we would grow old together. But now, it felt heavy, a reminder of all the years spent building something that was slipping through my fingers. I looked at Veronica again, and this time, I saw it clearly. The smugness in her smile, the way she seemed to take pleasure in my discomfort. This wasn't just a careless remark, this was deliberate. She was pushing me out, and Thomas wasn't doing anything to stop it. I had thought that when the day came that they would no longer need me, I could retire peacefully, content knowing that I had done my best. But now, I wasn't sure what I had been preparing for all these years. I felt like an outsider in my own home. I had given them everything, and this was how they repaid me? Veronica's words echoed again, louder this time, and I could feel my hands trembling. I clenched them into fists under the table. I wouldn't let them see how much it hurt. I wouldn't let them see the tears that were threatening to spill. But deep down, I knew something had to change. I couldn't let this continue. I had to take control back. I couldn't let them push me aside like this. I had spent my whole life fighting for them, for us. Now, it was my turn. I didn't know what I would do yet, but I knew one thing for sure. I wasn't going to let them win. I had spent too many years being the strong one, the one who kept everything together, to let them tear me down now. They may have thought they could toss me aside, but they didn't know who they were dealing with. I had a life left to live, and I would live it on my terms. As I sat there, the anger slowly subsided, replaced with something more powerful, determination. They had underestimated me, and that would be their mistake. I woke up the next morning with the feeling that something had shifted. The events of the night before were still fresh in my mind, but now, I felt oddly detached, like I was watching it all unfold from a distance. The words Veronica had said echoed in my mind, but there was no longer the sting of surprise, just a cold, heavy weight settling deep inside me. I didn't feel sad anymore, or angry. I felt resolved. The harsh reality was sinking in, and with it came clarity. I could no longer deny what was happening, what had been happening for a long time. I had been foolish to think that my place in this family was unshakable. As the years had passed, the love I thought I had been nurturing had slowly turned into a quiet obligation. To them, I was no longer a mother, no longer a vital part of the life they built. I was an afterthought. I had become the burden they couldn't wait to get rid of. I made myself a cup of tea and sat at the kitchen table, staring out the window at the garden I had tended to for decades. The roses, once so vibrant, now looked worn, the petals beginning to wilt. It was like they were mirroring me, withering away as the years passed, unnoticed and unappreciated. I had spent my entire life putting my family first, making sure that they were always taken care of, that they had everything they needed. I had never once stopped to think about myself, never once asked for anything in return. But now, I saw that it wasn't enough. My sacrifices meant nothing. It was as if all those years of cooking meals, fixing things around the house, and offering a listening ear had been erased with a few words from Veronica. I felt the weight of those years pressing down on me, and for the first time in a long time, I wondered what I had to show for it. I couldn't help but think of Thomas. My son. The one person who should have understood, who should have stood up for me. But he hadn't. He hadn't said a word when Veronica made her cruel toast. He hadn't even looked at me, as if he couldn't bear to acknowledge the truth. I had given him everything, my love, my time, my attention, and this was how he repaid me. By staying silent. It hurt more than I cared to admit. But I wasn't going to let it break me. I wasn't going to sit quietly and let them decide my fate. I had spent too long in the shadows, too long letting everyone else take the lead. It was time for me to stand up for myself, to take control of the life I had left. It wasn't going to be easy, and I knew it would take time, but I had the strength. I had always had the strength. I just had to remind myself of it. I took a deep breath and set my tea down. There was a lot to think about, a lot to plan. But one thing was certain, I wasn't going to let Veronica's words define me. I wasn't going to let her or anyone else push me aside. I was going to fight for my place in this world, in my family. I might have been quiet the night before, but that was the last time I would let them think they could get away with it. I would find a way to show them that I wasn't just the old lady they wanted to forget. I was Eleanor. And I wasn't going anywhere. The next few days felt like a blur. The sting of Veronica's words lingered in the back of my mind, but I refused to let them control me. I couldn't afford to be weak. I had worked too hard for this life, too hard to let them take it from me. I spent the morning in the garden, pulling weeds and tending to the flowers, letting the simple task soothe my mind. I didn't want to dwell on what had been said. I didn't want to dwell on how my own son had failed me, how I had been discarded so easily. But the more I worked, the more I realized that I couldn't keep pretending everything was fine. The silence between me and Thomas was growing, and the walls that had once been strong and supportive were now cracking. I could see it in his eyes every time he passed by me, the guilt, the hesitation, but still, no words came. It was as if he was too afraid to speak, too afraid to acknowledge the truth. He hadn't defended me when Veronica made her cruel toast, and he hadn't said a word since. How did we get here? How had we gone from a family that was once so close, to a family that felt like strangers? I couldn't help but replay every moment in my head, trying to pinpoint the moment it all started to go wrong. Maybe it was when Thomas married Veronica. She was always polite, but there was something about her that never felt right to me. She was always just a little too perfect, always with a smile on her face, but there was something in her eyes that never sat well with me. I had tried to be kind to her, to welcome her into our family, but she always kept me at arm's length. And now, after everything I had done for her and Thomas, she thought it was acceptable to make jokes about sending me away to a nursing home. I stood up from the garden bed, wiping my hands on my apron, and made my way inside. I had to do something. I couldn't just sit here and wait for them to make all the decisions for me. I had to take back control. I had to make them see that I was still worthy of respect, that I wasn't just some old woman waiting to be forgotten. I had spent too many years taking care of everyone else, making sure that Thomas, Veronica, and the kids had everything they needed. I had put my own life on hold for them. But now, it was my turn. It was time for me to stand up for myself. I went into the living room and sat down at my desk, pulling out a piece of paper and a pen. I wasn't sure what I was going to write yet, but I had to start somewhere. I had to start making a plan. I couldn't rely on Thomas to make things right. I had to do it myself. The more I thought about it, the more the idea began to take shape. I wasn't going to just let them send me away. I wasn't going to let them take away the home I had built, the life I had worked so hard for. I had every right to stay here, in the house I had made a home. I had every right to continue living my life on my own terms. And if they didn't like it, then they would have to face the consequences. I took a deep breath, steadying myself. I couldn't let fear stop me now. I had lived through so much in my life. This was just one more challenge to overcome. I could do this. I could fight for myself. I didn't need them to take care of me anymore. I was strong enough to stand on my own. I wasn't going to let them take away my dignity. I wasn't going to let them push me out of my own life. I was Eleanor, and I wasn't going anywhere. Days passed, and I kept my distance from the family. I couldn't look at them the same way anymore, especially Thomas. The silence between us had grown, and each passing moment felt like a step further away from the bond we once shared. I had always believed that family was everything, that no matter what, we would always have each other. But now, the truth was glaring in my face. The love I had given so freely, the years of sacrifice, seemed to mean nothing. They had all moved on, but I hadn't. I couldn't. As much as I tried to bury it, the feeling of abandonment kept resurfacing, like a bitter taste in the back of my throat. But I refused to give in to it. I refused to let them see me break. I had a life to live, and I wasn't going to let them dictate how it would be lived. One morning, as I sat by the window with a cup of coffee in hand, I found myself thinking about all the things I had done for them over the years. The endless hours I had spent cooking, cleaning, and running errands. The sacrifices I had made so that they could have everything they wanted. And for what? To be told I was no longer needed, that I was just an inconvenience? The thought made my blood boil, but I didn't let it show. I had to stay calm. I had to stay focused. I knew that if I let my emotions control me, I would lose. But if I stayed strong, stayed calm, I could turn this around. It was time to make a plan. I knew I couldn't rely on Thomas to fix things. If anything, he was part of the problem. Veronica, too. They had both made it clear where their loyalties lay. But I wasn't going to sit back and let them win. I had worked too hard for too long to just be thrown away. It was my time to take charge. I spent the next few days gathering information. I contacted a lawyer, not to start a battle, but to understand my rights, to make sure I knew exactly where I stood. I couldn't afford to make any mistakes. It was crucial that I had everything in place before making any moves. I couldn't let them control the narrative anymore. I had to control my own story. The lawyer was kind, understanding. He walked me through the legalities, explaining my rights regarding the house and my finances. It was a relief to know that I wasn't as powerless as I had thought. I still had control, and that made all the difference. With that newfound knowledge, I felt a surge of strength. I wasn't alone. I had the tools to stand up for myself. The next time they came to visit, I would be ready. I wouldn't back down. I wouldn't let them think they could push me around anymore. I was Eleanor, and I had spent my whole life building something worth protecting. I wasn't about to let them take it from me. When the doorbell rang a few days later, I knew they were coming to check on me, to see if I was ready to accept their offer to move into a nursing home. They thought I had no choice, thought I was too old to fight back. But they didn't know me. They didn't know what I was capable of. I opened the door, greeted them with a calm smile, and invited them in. The air was thick with tension, but I wasn't afraid anymore. I had the upper hand. I wasn't going to let them see me as weak. As we sat down in the living room, I could feel the unease radiating off Thomas, his eyes shifting. From me to Veronica. He knew something was different. He knew I wasn't going to back down. Veronica, on the other hand, seemed more smug than usual, her smile sharp, as if she thought this was all just a game. But it wasn't. This was my life, my future, and I wasn't going to let her take it away. I've been thinking, I said, my voice steady, about the house, about the plans you've made. I've decided it's time for me to make some decisions of my own. Thomas looked at me, confusion flickering in his eyes. What do you mean? I mean, I continued, I'm not going anywhere. I'm not moving into a nursing home. I'm not selling the house. This is my home, and I'm staying here. I've worked hard for everything I have, and I'm not giving it up without a fight. Veronica's smile faltered, and for the first time, I saw a flicker of doubt in her eyes. She wasn't expecting this. She wasn't prepared for me to stand up for myself. But I wasn't done yet. I've already spoken with a lawyer, I added, watching their reactions closely. I know my rights. I'm not as powerless as you think. The silence that followed was thick with tension. For a moment, no one spoke. Veronica opened her mouth, but no words came out. Thomas was the first to break the silence, his voice low. Mom, this isn't what we want. I looked at him, my eyes unwavering. Then prove it, I said quietly. Show me that you respect me. Show me that you value what I've done for this family. Until then, I'm staying right here." The room fell silent again, but this time, I didn't feel the weight of their judgment. I felt something else, strength. I wasn't the helpless old lady they thought I was. I was Eleanor, and I was ready to fight for my future. The following week, the tension at home remained, thickening with each passing day. I could feel it in the air, like walking through a fog of unspoken words and hidden resentments. They had expected me to fold, to give in to their plans. But I hadn't. I had stood my ground. Veronica, always with that perfect smile on her face, was still putting on a front, acting like she was doing me a favor by visiting. But every word, every glance she gave me felt calculated. It was as if she was trying to force me into submission, trying to make me feel small. But it wasn't working. I wasn't the same woman who had quietly accepted being pushed aside for so many years. I had changed. I had a fire in me now, a determination that I hadn't felt in a long time. But Thomas, he was different. The guilt in his eyes, the way he avoided looking at me, was a constant reminder of how far we had drifted apart. I could feel the pull of our old connection, the bond we had shared when he was younger, but it was slipping away, like water through my fingers. It wasn't just the house or the nursing home anymore. It was the way they had both abandoned me, like I was nothing more than a burden. The quiet desperation in Thomas's eyes told me everything I needed to know. He wasn't the man I had raised. I couldn't understand how he could let her control him this way. After everything we had been through, everything I had sacrificed, this is how he was repaying me? It was painful to accept, but I had to. I couldn't keep living in the past, wishing for a son who no longer existed. I had to face the reality of what was happening, and I had to do it on my own. I spent the next few days in quiet reflection, working in the garden, walking through the empty rooms of the house, and trying to sort through my emotions. I couldn't just sit here, waiting for them to make decisions for me. I had to take control. I had to make them see that I wasn't weak. That I wasn't going to be shoved aside so easily. But how? How could I make them understand? I thought back to the lawyer, to the advice he had given me. He had been firm, reassuring me that I had legal rights, that I didn't have to just accept their decisions. It was a small comfort, but it gave me the courage to make a plan. I wasn't going to fight them head on. That wasn't my style. But I was going to make it clear that I wasn't backing down. I started researching. I reached out to friends, former colleagues, anyone who could help me understand my options. I needed to be prepared, and I needed to move quickly. If I waited too long, if I gave them too much time to convince me, I knew I would lose. I wasn't going to let that happen. My days became consumed with gathering information, making phone calls, and setting things in motion. But every time I spoke to someone, every time I made a decision, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was fighting against the very people I had raised. My heart ached every time I thought of Thomas, of how he used to be, of the boy I had loved so deeply. But I couldn't let that stop me. I couldn't let my love for him blind me to the truth. The truth was that they had crossed a line. Veronica, with her cold smile and sharp tongue, had overstepped. And Thomas, the son I had always trusted, had failed me. I was on my own now. But that didn't mean I was helpless. It didn't mean I couldn't fight. I had lived through enough hardship in my life to know that nothing worth having comes easy. This would be no different. I was ready. Ready to take control. Ready to show them that I was still strong, still capable, and still worthy of respect. It was time to stop being the one who always gave, the one who always sacrificed. It was time to take back what was mine. And I wasn't going to let anyone stand in my way. The days that followed were filled with a strange kind of peace. The tension that had built between me and Thomas seemed to hang in the air, thick and suffocating. But I wasn't going to let it defeat me. I had made my decision. I had taken control, and now it was time to let the chips fall where they may. The house, which had once been a place of laughter and warmth, now felt cold and distant. I could no longer pretend that everything was fine, that the family I had worked so hard to build was still intact. But in some ways, the weight of it all felt lighter. I no longer had to carry the burden of trying to please everyone. I had made my stand, and now it was time to let them see the consequences. The next time Thomas came over, I was ready. I could tell that he was nervous, the way he kept looking at me with a mix of guilt and uncertainty. He hadn't spoken much since our last conversation, but I could tell that he was trying to figure out what to say, what to do. He had always been a man of few words, but I had always trusted him. I had always believed that he would be there for me when I needed him most. But now, I wasn't so sure. "Mom," he started, his voice softer than usual, "I think we need to talk." I nodded, gesturing for him to sit. I had nothing to hide. I wasn't going to back down. "I've been thinking a lot about what happened," he continued, his hands fidgeting in his lap. "And I realized that I didn't handle things well." I looked at him, trying to read his expression. Was he truly remorseful, or was this just another attempt to smooth things over? "I know you're upset, and I understand why," he said. "But I don't want you to feel like you're not wanted, or like you don't belong here." His words felt hollow, like he was saying what he thought I wanted to hear rather than what he truly felt. I had heard these empty promises before, and I wasn't sure if I could believe them anymore. "I'm not going to a nursing home, Thomas," I said, my voice steady. "I've made my decision. I'm staying here, in my home, where I belong." He didn't say anything at first, just looked at me, the weight of his silence speaking volumes. I could see the conflict in his eyes, the way he was torn between his loyalty to Veronica and his love for me. "I know it's not easy," he finally said, his voice tinged with frustration. "But you're not getting any younger. You can't keep living here alone." The words stung, but I didn't let them show. I had heard them too many times before, and I knew that they were coming from a place of fear, not love. "I'm not asking for your permission, Thomas," I replied calmly. "I'm telling you what I'm going to do." He looked at me for a long moment, then sighed, slumping in his chair. "I just want what's best for you," he said, his voice filled with regret. "I want you to be happy." I stared at him, my heart heavy. How had it come to this? How had my son, the person I had always trusted, become someone who would just go along with Veronica's plans, without ever considering my feelings? I had raised him better than this. I had taught him the value of family, of respect, of loyalty. And yet here we were, with him caught in the middle, too afraid to stand up for what was right. "I know you do," I said quietly. "But what you think is best for me isn't always what I want. And right now, what I want is to stay here. To live my life the way I choose." Thomas didn't answer. He just sat there, his eyes downcast, the weight of the situation settling on his shoulders. I could see that he was struggling, torn between his wife and his mother, and it broke my heart. But I wasn't going to beg him for anything. I wasn't going to apologize for wanting to live my own life. "I'm not going anywhere, Thomas," I repeated, more firmly this time. "And if you can't accept that, then maybe it's time we had a real conversation about what's been happening around here." He looked up at me, his face pale. "What do you mean?" I stood up, walking over to the window and looking out at the garden. "I mean that I've spent too many years taking care of everyone else, and now it's time for me to take care of myself," I said. "And if you and Veronica can't respect that, then I don't know where that leaves us." The silence between us was heavy, almost suffocating. I knew that the words I had spoken were a turning point. There was no going back from here. But I wasn't afraid. I had made my choice. And no matter what happened, I was going to stand by it. The silence between Thomas and me seemed to stretch on for hours, though it had only been moments. He sat there, his face etched with confusion and conflict, but I saw it, he was slowly beginning to understand. I had drawn a line, and it wasn't going to be erased this time. He opened his mouth, closed it again, unsure of what to say. But I wasn't waiting for his apology. I wasn't asking for his approval. I had already made up my mind. You need to stop, Thomas, I said, my voice steady, the weight of my words heavy in the air. You need to stop treating me like I'm some kind of burden that can be moved out of the way. I am your mother, not an inconvenience. He looked at me, his eyes searching mine, looking for something. Maybe he was looking for forgiveness, maybe for an escape, but he wasn't going to find either. I don't know what's going on with you and Veronica, I continued, keeping my voice calm despite the storm of emotions swirling inside me. But I've spent my entire life giving to this family. And now, when I need respect, when I need to be heard, you've abandoned me. I could feel the tension in the room, the weight of everything that had been unsaid for so long. The years of quiet resentment, the unspoken expectations, all coming to a head now. I can't keep pretending, Thomas, I said. You and Veronica have been making decisions for me, telling me what's best for me, without ever once asking what I want. I've put up with it for too long. I've been silent for too long. But not anymore. He looked down at his hands, his shoulders slumped. I never meant for it to be like this, he whispered, more to himself than to me. I could see the struggle in him, but it wasn't enough. He had chosen his side. He had let Veronica's influence cloud his judgment, and now, he was seeing the consequences of that choice. You don't get it, do you? I said, my voice rising just slightly. You don't get that I'm not asking for permission. I'm telling you that this is my life, my home. You don't have the right to tell me where I belong. His eyes met mine again, and this time, there was a flicker of something, regret, maybe, or realization. But it was too late for apologies now. I don't want you to feel like you don't belong, he said softly, his voice barely above a whisper. I never wanted to hurt you. Then prove it, I said, my heart pounding in my chest. Prove it by standing up for me. Prove it by respecting me, by treating me like the person I am, not the person you want me to be. He sat there in silence for a moment, his gaze fixed on the floor. I could see the battle inside him, the pull between the life he had with Veronica and the life he had with me. But I wasn't going to beg him to choose me. I wasn't going to beg him to love me the way he used to. I can't keep doing this, I said, my voice steady now, stronger than before. I can't keep pretending that everything is okay, that I don't see what's happening. It's time for you to decide, Thomas. Are you going to be the son I raised, or are you going to let her take everything from me? His head snapped up, and for the first time in a long time, I saw a flicker of the man I had once known. The man who had cared about what was right. But it was fleeting, and the look in his eyes told me that he was torn. He was afraid. Afraid of what would happen if he truly chose me, if he truly stood up to Veronica. I don't want to lose you, he said, his voice trembling. I felt a pang in my chest, but I couldn't let it stop me. Then you have to fight for me, I said, my voice firm. You have to fight for what's right. Because if you don't, I'm done. The finality of my words hung in the air, and I knew, deep down, that this was it. This was the turning point. There was no going back. I had made my stand, and now, it was his turn. I'll think about it, he said, but I could see the uncertainty in his eyes. It wasn't enough. I had hoped for more. I had hoped for him to finally take a stand, but it wasn't happening. Not now. And maybe, just maybe, that was what I needed to hear. It was time for me to stop waiting for him to save me. It was time for me to save myself. I stood up from my chair, my heart heavy but my mind clear. I'm not waiting anymore, Thomas, I said, my voice low but strong. I've waited long enough. And now, it's time for me to live my life on my terms. I turned and walked away, feeling a sense of finality settle over me. The weight of everything was still there, but it was no longer a burden. It was a choice. My choice. And that made all the difference. It had been a few days since my conversation with Thomas. The house was quieter than ever. The air felt thick, suffocating, as if something important was about to happen, but no one was willing to move. I had stood up for myself, and now it was time to see if Thomas would do the same. I wasn't sure if he would, but part of me was ready to face whatever came next. I had already made my peace with the fact that my relationship with him might never be the same. But I wouldn't let that be the reason I gave up. I spent the days in quiet reflection, trying to figure out what my next move should be. The lawyer's advice was still fresh in my mind. I had rights, and I wasn't going to let anyone take that from me. Veronica might think she had one, that I was just a frail old woman who would bend to her will, but she was wrong. I wasn't going anywhere. I didn't need their approval. I didn't need their permission to live my life the way I chose. The sound of the doorbell broke my thoughts, and I immediately knew who it was. I wasn't surprised when Thomas stood in front of me, his face drawn, looking as though he hadn't slept in days. He had come to talk again, but this time, I wasn't sure what he had to say. "Mom," he started, his voice sounding tired, as though the weight of the situation had finally caught up with him. "I've been thinking. A lot. About everything." I didn't say anything at first. I simply waited for him to continue. I wasn't going to make it easy for him. Not this time. "I know I haven't been fair to you," he continued, his eyes filled with regret. "I haven't been the son you deserve. I've let Veronica control so much, and I've ignored how you felt. I'm sorry." His words stung, but I wasn't sure if I could trust them. I had heard apologies before, promises that things would change, only for them to fade away like they always did. You can't just say sorry and expect everything to go back to how it was, I said, my voice steady but firm. "I've given you everything, Thomas. I've spent my whole life putting you and this family first. And now, you're telling me that you've been wrong all along?" He looked down, clearly ashamed. "I know. I should have been more supportive. I should have stood up for you. But I didn't. I've let Veronica get in my head, and I've let her manipulate me." He paused, taking a deep breath. "I'm asking for your forgiveness, Mom. I know I've hurt you, and I don't know if I can ever make it right. But I want to try. I want to fix this." His words were sincere, but I wasn't sure I could believe them. The damage had been done. Too much time had passed, too many chances wasted. I had spent years looking the other way, hoping that things would get better, that things would go back to the way they once were. But they hadn't. And now, I couldn't ignore the truth any longer. "I'm not going to just forget what's happened, Thomas," I said, my voice quiet but resolute. "I need to see that you're serious. I need to know that you're willing to fight for me, for this family. I'm not asking you to choose between me and Veronica. But I need you to stand up for what's right. And if you can't do that, then I don't know where that leaves us." He nodded slowly, as if processing the weight of my words. "I understand," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "I don't expect you to trust me right away. I just want a chance to prove that I can do better." "We'll see," I said, my heart heavy. It wasn't the forgiveness I wanted to give, but it was the only one I could offer. I couldn't pretend that everything would be fine just because he said the right things. It was going to take time. I needed to see action, not words. He stood up, and for a moment, there was a strange silence between us. It wasn't the uncomfortable silence that had filled the room for so long, but something different. Something more hopeful. "I'll do whatever it takes," he said, his eyes meeting mine with sincerity. I didn't respond right away. I wasn't sure what to say. For the first time in years, I felt like maybe, just maybe, there was a chance. A chance to rebuild. A chance to have my son back, even if it wasn't the way I had imagined. But it would take time. And I wasn't going to rush into anything. I had already spent too many years sacrificing my own happiness for the sake of others. Now, it was my turn. I had taken the first step. I had made my stand. And no matter what happened next, I knew I would be okay. I had to be. I had no choice. As Thomas left, the door closing softly behind him, I felt a quiet resolve settle over me. It wasn't the end of the story. It was just the beginning. In this deeply moving family story, a mother struggles to reclaim her dignity after years of sacrifice, as her son and daughter-in-law push her to the edge of abandonment. As the family dynamics unravel, we witness the quiet strength of the mother as she faces betrayal from the very people she spent her life caring for. The story is a raw reflection of family relationships, revealing how a mother's unwavering love and selflessness can sometimes be overlooked. Through the eyes of the mother, we explore how she must navigate the emotional turmoil caused by her son's silence and her daughter-in-law's cold indifference, ultimately finding her own voice. This family story highlights the complexity of familial bonds, where love is tested by neglect and loyalty is questioned. The tension grows as the mother makes a stand, refusing to be pushed aside any longer. Her journey to reclaim respect and honor is not just about confronting her family but about asserting her place in her own life, challenging the expectations that have been placed upon her. In this powerful family story, the mother's strength and determination shine through, proving that it's never too late to stand up for what you deserve. It's a poignant reminder that family stories are not always perfect, but they are always filled with lessons about resilience and self-worth. Through her actions, the mother shows us that in the face of betrayal, we can choose to take back control, no matter how difficult the journey may be. This emotional family story is a testament to the power of self-empowerment and the unbreakable bond between a mother and her right to be respected, loved, and valued. Character 1 is a 70-year-old woman with white skin. She wears a simple yet elegant navy blue dress. Her expression is calm and composed. The shot is a frontal view showing her dignity and strength. No cartoon, no CGI, no illustration. Character 2 is a 45-year-old man with white skin. He has a well-groomed appearance wearing a simple button-up shirt. His face shows signs of stress and guilt. The shot is a frontal view focusing on his conflicted expression. No cartoon, no CGI, no illustration. Scene 1. The intense confrontation. The camera opens on a tense and dramatic scene in the living room of a house. The two main characters, the mother and her son, stand facing each other, the air thick with unspoken tension. The room is dimly lit, highlighting the serious expressions on their faces. The mother's eyes are full of resolve, while her son looks conflicted and guilty. The scene feels like a final showdown, with both characters unwilling to back down, each holding their ground in a battle for respect and control. The weight of their years of accumulated frustration is palpable, creating a powerful moment of confrontation that captures the heart of the family's struggle. This scene emphasizes their emotional conflict, with both characters staring each other down in a charged silence, neither willing to relent. No words are spoken, but their body language says it all. The camera lingers on the moment, intensifying the feeling of an unavoidable reckoning. Scene 2, Character 1. In everyday life, the camera cuts to a quiet, peaceful moment in the morning. The mother, dressed in simple, modest clothing, is tending to her garden. The sunlight filters through the trees, casting a warm glow on her face as she carefully waters her flowers. Her expression is calm, almost serene, yet there's a subtle hint of sadness in her eyes. The sounds of birds chirping and the wind rustling through the trees create a peaceful atmosphere, but there's an underlying sense of isolation as she works alone. The camera captures the stillness of her routine, showing the contrast between her peaceful daily life and the brewing storm of family conflict. The shot lingers on her hands, worn from years of hard work, as they gently handle the plants, symbolizing her long history of sacrifice. Scene 3, Character 2. In everyday life. Next, the scene shifts to the son's life. The camera follows him as he sits in a modern, neatly organized office, looking over papers. He's dressed in a sharp, professional outfit, his posture stiff as he focuses intently on his work. The light in the room is cold and artificial, casting long shadows that reflect the emotional distance in his life. There's a phone call he avoids answering, glancing at it with hesitation. He picks up the phone but doesn't speak. Instead, he looks out the window, lost in thought. His expression is strained, a mix of guilt and uncertainty, as he tries to balance his duties as a son and his role in his marriage. The camera zooms in on his face, capturing the weight of the decisions he's made, and the quiet inner turmoil he's been hiding. Scene 4. The confrontation with the antagonist. The scene intensifies as both main characters face off against Veronica, the antagonist. The setting is a tense family dinner, the table set with food, but the atmosphere is anything but warm. The camera captures the three of them in a wide shot, with Veronica at one end of the table, smiling slyly, and the mother and son sitting across from each other, visibly uncomfortable. The mother's eyes are sharp, filled with determination, while the son's expression is torn. Veronica's smirk contrasts with the discomfort between them, her eyes flicking between the mother and son with calculated malice. The tension is thick, as if the dinner is a facade for the larger, deeper conflict that is about to boil over. The camera lingers on each character's face, showing the emotional gap between them and the growing distrust towards Veronica's influence over the family. Scene 5. The quiet reflection. The scene shifts to a more introspective moment. The mother is alone in her room, sitting by a window that overlooks the quiet backyard. The camera focuses on her face as she reflects on the years of sacrifice, her mind turning over the events of the last few days. There's a quiet sadness in her eyes, but also a quiet strength. Her hands rest on her lap, her fingers twitching slightly as she considers the future. The light outside is soft, the colors muted, symbolizing the inner conflict she's going through. The camera pulls back slowly, showing her small, but peaceful space, emphasizing the contrast between her personal resolve and the chaos of her family's actions. Scene 6. The resolution. The final scene shows the mother standing in the living room, the house quiet. She's dressed in her simple dress, standing tall, facing the door where her son is about to leave. The son pauses at the door, looking back at her. His expression has softened, regret and sorrow clearly written on his face. The camera slowly zooms in on her face as she stands firm, no longer the passive figure she once was. The silence between them speaks volumes as the door closes, leaving her standing in the quiet, no longer burdened by the weight of the past. The camera holds on her for a moment longer, showing the finality in her stance. She is no longer waiting for anyone. She has chosen her path, and the scene ends with her standing tall, ready to embrace whatever comes next. 1. The camera focuses on a tense, emotional showdown between the mother and her son in the living room. The room is dimly lit, casting long shadows across their faces. The mother stands tall, her expression fierce with determination, her eyes filled with resolve. Her son, sitting across from her, looks conflicted, a mix of guilt and hesitation on his face. The tension is palpable, thick in the air, as both refuse to back down. The camera zooms in on their faces, highlighting the intensity of their emotions. The mother's posture is strong, standing her ground, while the son's body language is tense, his hands fidgeting as he tries to find the words to make things right. The shot holds on them for a moment longer, capturing the silent battle between the two. No cartoon, no CGI, no illustration. 1, 2, 2. The camera opens on the mother, standing in her garden. It's early morning, and the sunlight gently bathes her in warm hues, casting a peaceful glow over her simple, modest dress. She bends down to tend to the plants, her hands moving carefully, her expression serene but with a trace of sadness in her eyes. The scene is calm and quiet, with only the soft rustle of leaves and distant birdsongs filling the air. The camera captures her from a frontal angle, focusing on her hands as they gently water the plants. There is a sense of solitude here, but also a quiet strength, as if she is grounded in the life she has built, despite the emotional storm she is about to face. No cartoon, no CGI, no illustration. 1, 3. The scene shifts to the son, sitting alone in his office. The room is modern, sterile, with cold lighting, and his posture is stiff as he works. His face is tired, his eyes occasionally flicking to his phone, as if avoiding something. He doesn't respond to the incoming call, instead staring at the window as if lost in thought. The camera zooms in on his face, capturing the guilt and internal struggle reflected in his expression. His hands rest on the desk, tense, not moving. The shot holds on him for a moment longer, showing his isolation. There's a quiet tension around him, as if he's battling his own choices. No cartoon, no CGI, no illustration. 2-4. The tension heightens as the camera captures all three characters together in a dining room. The mother, son, and the antagonist, Veronica, are seated around the table. The mother's face is stern, her expression a mix of anger and hurt. Veronica sits at the head of the table, her smile faint but full of confidence, as if she's won. The son, caught in the middle, looks from one to the other, unsure, but there's a growing sense of guilt in his eyes. The mother's gaze is unyielding, her posture straight and strong, while Veronica's smirk adds to the tension in the air. The camera shifts between their faces, focusing on the uncomfortable silence that fills the room. The shot intensifies, capturing the emotional divide and power dynamics at play. No cartoon, no CGI, no illustration. 1-2-5. The camera shifts to a quiet, reflective moment. The mother is sitting in a room alone, her hands folded in her lap, looking out the window at the garden. The light streaming through the window is soft and warm, but there is a sense of melancholy in her eyes as she gazes into the distance. The room is simple, but the peacefulness contrasts with the storm brewing inside her. Her expression is calm but thoughtful, showing the weight of the decisions she's made and the emotional toll it has taken on her. The camera zooms in on her face, capturing the internal conflict and resolve building within her. There is no immediate action, just the quiet strength of a woman coming to terms with her own power. No cartoon, no CGI, no illustration. 1-6. The final scene shows the mother standing firm in the living room. She's dressed in a simple yet elegant dress, her posture straight, unwavering. The camera focuses on her face, capturing the quiet determination in her eyes. The son, standing by the door, looks back at her, his expression soft with regret, but there's still a question in his eyes. The mother's gaze is steady, no longer the passive figure she once was. The camera pulls back slowly, leaving her standing there, resolute. The quiet power in her stance speaks volumes about the choice she's made and the future she's about to embrace. The silence is heavy, but it's the silence of strength. No cartoon, no CGI, no illustration. 1.